Hi, and welcome back to Pay Down Debt Solutions. I'm Jen, and I had a really interesting client situation about a month ago, and I thought it'd be a really good time to talk about it because these guys were so depressed about their current situation. Even though it wasn't really that bad, they just felt like they were overwhelmed with all of their bills, they were overwhelmed with all of their payments, and they felt like they were working for nothing, that they just couldn't get ahead. And I know that many of you out there are feeling exactly this way. And I know that because Dan and I felt that way for many years until we found Velocity Banking and until we discovered how to change our banking and how to change what we did in order to feel financially free and be financially free, right? So a lot of times when you have a lot of payments and you feel really strapped and really tied down to, the number of months and years you have out there with these debts, it can be overwhelming. And Americans right now are feeling that way. They're feeling completely overwhelmed. Man, you guys, look at the 2024 bankruptcy statistics alone, okay? Take a look at those, or take a look at the savings accounts for 2024. People are not able to save as much as they were because, the cost of living is higher. Everything's more expensive, and people just take on payments that they can't afford because they thought they could or somebody told them they could. So that's what they did. And so they're feeling strapped and they're feeling really tight, and it's really depressing after a while. I get it. So we sat there and we talked to them for a while, and even though their situation really wasn't all that bad, I can see why they felt that way, and we offered them a really great solution. And so what's good about this solution is that, we got to really see it come, full circle for them, in just this past week when they told us that they were able to get a line of credit that they could then help defeat their interest with. So today I really want to go into why we are payment poor and why we feel so strapped, okay? So what does that look like? And just knowing that the traditional banking that you are doing right now is keeping you in that situation, all right? Again, those of you that know me know that I am an ex-banker. I'm an ex-branch manager, so I come to you with the knowledge of banking and financial institutions, behind me. I also, carry my Series 6. And I was looking into a Series 7, which are investments. So I understand banking, I understand investments, and I understand this world very well when it comes to your finances. So I want to kind of go over that with you and talk to you again about why we feel so payment poor. Again, I'm not a financial advisor. That's not what we do. I'm just somebody that had a personal experience with me and my husband. We had a good personal experience that we want to bring to you and how we found Velocity Banking. So we're trying to share that with everybody. So let's talk about why we're living paycheck to paycheck. So let's talk about that. So there is another way, okay? There is another way, and we need to stop the endless loans, all right? It's the loans that you're getting that are making you feel payment poor. Lines of credit aren't the ones that are causing the problems. It's really not the credit cards that are causing the problems if you're doing your banking properly. Now, they are if you're not running them well and you don't know what's going on with your finances. Yeah, then it can be a problem. If you're the kind of person that can't curtail their spending, that you just spend endlessly and copious amounts of money that you're not paying attention to, yeah, you're going to have a problem. But if you can keep to a budget, if you can form a budget, if you've looked at your finances and organized them and understand what you have coming in and what you have going out, and you can stick to a budget, we can help you turn your cash-strapped feeling into a feeling of financial freedom, all right? We can do that. So let's talk a little bit about why you want to use Velocity Banking instead of the traditional banking way, okay? So let's talk about what a traditional bank account looks for everybody out there, all right? So you have your money, right? You have your direct deposit. Your direct deposit comes in, it comes into your checking account. It gets parked there. So we're going to use the number of $4,800. Let's say that this family has an income of $4,800. Well, that $4,800 is going to come into their bank account through a direct deposit. It's going to sit in that checking account for about a minute, and then they're going to pay their mortgage, right? They're going to pay their mortgage. That's a loan payment. They're going to pay their internet, right? We have living expenses, so internet is part of that. They're going to pay for their internet. They're going to pay their utilities. Got to live, right? Going to pay utilities. They're going to pay their phone bill. They're going to pay for groceries. They're going to pay their car loan. They're going to pay gas. They're going to pay any personal loans that they might have out there, or maybe a home equity loan. Maybe they've added onto their house and they have a home equity loan, or refinished their basement, so they have a loan out there that they need to take care of. So they're paying that payment monthly. Let's say they have a credit card 1 and they have credit card 2 and then 3, 4, and 5. They have a bunch of credit cards out there. So all of these are coming out of their checking account as payments, and they're making those payments, okay? So when you make your payments like that and you end up having very little savings left over for the most part, if you have a situation such as so many Americans do, there's not much left over for savings. And I see this every single day, you guys. I see people that come to us and they have very little positive cash flow. Maybe their cash flow is even, they don't have any cash flow, or maybe it's negative. And so they're trying to figure out how that they can rework things, because they've learned from this channel and other velocity banking channels out there that there is a better way. So they come to us and they want to know what they can do. So we see this all the time. We see people out there barely having anything left over to save. And so that's what they end up with, zero. Or if they can save $100 or $200, something happens and it gets wiped out, right? So very quickly. All right, so if you have an income of $4,800 and you have expenses, let's say your expenses are $400 or $4,400 each month, and your income again is $4,800. So that leaves you with a cash flow of $400. Seems pretty good, doesn't it? Cash flow seems good. That sounds great. You know, we're doing the traditional banking way. We've got a cash flow of $400. So we should be all set. We should be pretty good. We should be able to save that, right? So why am I broke? Why am I broke then? If I have a cash flow of $400, why then am I broke? Well, if you take a look at life in general, right? We know that things happen, things come up, okay? So when you start out with your cash flow at $400, and let's say you're in January. In January, you have to spend $1,200 on tires for your car, okay? So you need brand new tires, you spend $1,200. Well, you had a cash flow of $400, so you take your $1,200, you minus that $400 of cash flow, and now you're in the negative by $800 for that month. Where does that go? Goes on a credit card, doesn't it? That's the problem right there. So February comes along. So in February, we have a medical bill. It's $150, okay? That was unexpected, above and beyond what we're used to. So we're gonna subtract that. We have, like my daughter, for instance, she has an academy show that she goes to. She takes and she shows horses. So she has a little academy show that she goes to, and that's gonna cost $250. Well, we take our $400 cash flow, right? We subtract the $400 we've just paid for the medical bill and that academy show, and now we're at zero. We're at even. We haven't gone backwards, so I guess that's good, right? But remember, we're negative from the month before, $800. Now it's March. So in March, we have a school trip for the kids, right? You have some kids and one of them has a place to go. Like for us in Michigan, one of the big school trips is going to Mackinac Island. So a bunch of kids, and their parents, they go to Mackinac Island. They stay at the Grand Hotel up there. You know, they go and they do a bunch of sightseeing. They learn a lot about Michigan's history, and they do that. Well, you know, that costs $300. So there's $300 we're subtracting for our $400 in cash flow. And then we have a dental issue. We have to get a filling. That filling costs money, okay? So that's gonna cost us $175 above and beyond what we have for our dental coverage, okay? So now we take our school trip, we take our filling, and we take $475 and we're subtracting our $400 cash flow, and now we have $75 we're in the hole for that month, okay? So again, those unexpected things, they sure add up, don't they? So where does that go? That ends up going on the credit card too, because we don't have enough savings built up, or we wiped it out in January. So now comes April, all right? So we have a frozen caliper on our car, okay? So that's gonna cost $100, and we need to get new brakes put on, $130. So now we're at $230 negative. Then the dogs go to the vet for their visit, and they have to get their flea and tick stuff, they have to get all their shots, they have to get all that stuff, and it costs you $600, right? So where are you gonna get that? Well, you're going to your credit card at that point, right? You're gonna put that baby on your credit card because you don't have the extra, because now you've spent $830 that has come out of nowhere at this point, right? And you have to subtract the $400 of cash flow. So now we're negative by $430. So This is the problem that we run into, right? Because life happens and things happen. And then the credit card gets built up because we put these expenses that we don't have any cash for on our credit card. And then people look at the credit card like the credit card is evil. Well, it's not the credit card that's evil. It's the banking industry that's actually evil when you think about it. And when we take a good look at this, you're going to know exactly why I say this. All right. So now we enter the pay down way. We enter velocity banking and we show you a different way of running your finances so that you don't end up in this situation. Or if you do, you have a place to go and you still might have some cash flow to work down your debts, okay? So now we're looking at the pay down way. So we have $4,800, our income hasn't changed. So the $4,800 then goes into our bank account literally for about a minute, because then it passes through the bank account and it goes into a personal line of credit, home equity line of credit, business line of credit, some kind of line of credit, okay? So in this case, and for our example that we're going to board for you here, it is a home equity loan, a line of credit that they got. So it's going to be a home equity line in my case on the board. So that goes into this line of credit, or the RLOC. Remember, we've got RLOCs, right? RLOC, revolving line of credit. Okay, so that's what RLOC. So when you guys hear me refer to RLOCs, anybody that's new to us, just know I'm referring to a revolving line of credit. Okay, so your revolving line of credit becomes a very powerful tool, and the reason it is a powerful tool is because revolving lines of credit are all configured on an average daily balance. They are not amortized. They are not front-end loaded. We all know that our mortgages are amortized. And so what does that mean? That means that the interest that you pay, okay, is all front-loaded on that mortgage, okay? And ours, on all loans, they are front-end loaded. So you're paying your interest first, which means the bank is getting their money first for loaning you that money. They're getting their interest and less is going to the principal. And as you move through that loan over the years, it's going to be inverted then, right? So it's at first it's all interest that you pay, or mostly interest. And then as the years go by, it flips and then it becomes more principal. But again, the banks get their money first and that's how it's configured. But not the case on RLOCs, revolving lines of credit. They are configured on an average daily balance. And that is why they work much better in the long run. So remember, we've got our $4,800, money comes into the bank as a pass through, comes in your bank account, and it hits the personal line of credit. So what do I mean by that? What do I mean by it hits the line of credit? So what I'm saying here is that your money goes into your bank account and a payment is then made, okay, as your deposit, a payment is then made to that line of credit. So then what happens is that line of credit then is taking care of all of your expenses. It's taking care of your mortgage, it's taking care of your internet, it's taking care of your utilities, your phone, it's taking care of your gas, your groceries, it's taking care of your car loan, your personal loan that you have out there, credit card 1, credit card 2. That's what it's taking care of. Now, it's also doing something else for you because you have learned that you have a whole heck of a lot of payments from over here, right? You have a whole heck of a lot of payments and you have some cash flow at the end of the day, but it isn't a whole lot. So you've learned that we're going to then consolidate into a revolving line of credit. Not a loan, never a loan, always a line. You're going to then consolidate some of these into your line of credit. And so those are going to take over for these loans, loans that you have, and you're going to free up cash flow, okay? So money again, we're going to recap it, start from the recap. $4,800 comes in as a direct deposit, it goes into your bank account. It is then made as a payment to your line of credit. Your line of credit then is taking care of all of these debts and it's actually paid these off. So the payments that you made on your car loan, your personal loan, your credit card 1 and credit card 2 now are cash flow. So you no longer have $400 in cash flow, you have more, okay? So remember, when this happens, our expenses then are dropped to $2,800, let's say. So now our expenses went from $4,400 down to $2,800 because we took care of these through that line of credit. So we now have a cash flow of $2,000. That changes this picture significantly, doesn't it? So now what we have is $2,000 pays down your personal line balance, and it quickly, okay, it quickly drops and the interest paid is much less. So it quickly drops the amount of payments you have and it drops what you're paying over time for all of these debts that you have, okay? So same situation here, January, February, March, right? So in January, if this is our cash flow, we're plus 1,200, remember? Because we had the 400, the tire payment that came out, the 400 minus the 2,000 is 1,200, so we're positive still. We're positive by 1,200. That's going to work down our balances. February, we have our 2,000. We subtract out our 4, right? Because the Academy show and the medical bill came to 400. So now we're positive 600 still. And we had life happen to us, right? Life happened. We're still positive, and we're significantly positive. So now it's March. In March, we had our school trip and we had our filling. So we were negative $75. So we take 2,000 minus the 75, it brings us to 1,925, all right? So April, 2,000 minus 430, because remember, we had all of this happening plus the dog visit, so we're negative 430, but we took 2,000, right, because we have that as our cash flow, minus the 430, we're still positive by 1,570. So when you add all this together, in 4 months, we're still able to work down this personal line of credit or home equity line of credit because we have $62.95 that we are using to hammer down the debts that we have using simple interest versus the amortized schedule that all loans are on, right? So when you calculate the simple interest, you're going to see how exactly that helps work everything down. All right, so now let's take our customers, right? The ones that we had a therapy session for, they were really depressed, guys. They were really upset. You know, they felt like they kept working and working and working and they weren't getting much back, okay? And as a matter of fact, they were only positive by $90. So you can see where any of this happens to them at $90 positive, they've got a real problem. And they did because they kept getting themselves more and more negative and having to use the credit cards, which those credit cards kept going up because they just didn't have enough for the what ifs, right? So if we take a look at them, okay, so them specifically, they had an income of $5,600 or they still have it, of $5,600. Their total expenses were $5,510, leaving them a positive $90 cash flow. So their mortgage was $248,003, and it's at a 6.25% interest rate, and the payment on that is $1,527. Okay, so then they have a car loan here for $32,510 at 4%, and it's $500 payment. Okay, so that's a pretty big payment. And then they have another car loan 2 we'll call it, and it's $20,000, so $20,088. It's at 3.75, and that payment is $368, okay? And these two are both for 6 years, okay? They have those for 6 years. So at the end of the term for these, they will have paid $4,111 in interest for this first car, and then $27.99 for the second car here, okay? So that means that this is $69.10. That's the debt that they have for the interest there. All right, so this interest isn't as significant as the interest you're about to see, okay? So the interest from a loan, they have a personal loan here. They did actually refinish their basement, so the comment I made earlier was actually theirs. So they did finish their basement and it cost them $34,680, and they did get a personal loan for that. They took out a personal loan, okay? And so, I'm sorry, that's not a personal loan. That's a home equity. It was a home equity loan for $34,680, okay? And so they had then 8.25% interest on that, and the payment is $612, all right? So $612, and it's for about 6 years, okay? So that was 6 years. So that means by the time that terms out, they're gonna spend $9,405 by the time they pay that off, okay? So $9,000 it costs them to refinish their basement. So we have another loan out here, a credit card. It's Bank of America. $79.60 is how much they owe. It's at 19%. $159 is their payment. If they paid $159 on this, okay, and they really don't have much wiggle room, so they keep it at $159. It's going to take them 8 years, and they're going to have spent almost $8,000 in interest to pay off a loan that costs about the same, right? That's ridiculous. So it's going to cost them a lot of money in interest to carry this out. Then they have a Chase card out there for $11,600. It's at 21%. And then the payment on that is $232, all right? Now, if they leave this loan or this line of credit out there at 21% and only pay $232, it's going to take them 10 years and they're going to have paid back $16,207. That's pretty steep as well, okay? So, and a lot of times I don't put the, the card carrier on there just because there's no point in it. We all know that the cards out there, there's lots of different cards, and I just don't want to point out, the how much the interest rates are, because they're all about the same. They vary from bank to bank and card to card. All right, so now when we talk to them, we looked at their picture, their financial picture, and we decided that probably the best thing for them to do was to try to get a home equity line of credit at this point. They had this loan out there, right? And so that was a small equity loan, but they were able to then get a home equity line of credit after about, it took I think 3 or 4 weeks to get it after they did the appraisal and all that. So there, it came back at $98,997. So now they have wiggle room and they have room to take care of things and to do velocity banking. They were pretty excited about this, you guys. They were pretty excited when they realized that they could get, a bunch of money and they could run their banking and save themselves money, because this is what it looks like. So when we took a look at everything, we decided that we were going to take care of these right here. It didn't make sense to include the car loans in it, because if you take a look, and they were a couple of years into both of these, they only are paying at this point, the biggest interest they already paid in the first 2 years. So what they have left, we're going to leave it. We're not going to bother with it. We're not going to pull in these debts. Basically, it would be like, pulling in debts to then pay interest on them all over again. We're going to let that go and leave it, because it just made more sense, and you'll see why. Okay, so when we take and add all these debts together, it's $54,240. That is the amount of these 3 loans and lines together. And then in their payments would cost, in the payments, they have $1,003 in just these 3. And then the interest in just these 3 alone is $33,548, okay? So look at this. This interest alone is about what they got that first, home equity loan for, to refinish their basement. All right, so what we did is we took these and we rolled them into this home equity line of credit at 11.5%. Now, the simple interest is what makes this magical, because when you configure interest like this, okay, it's done in an average daily balance. And we know, based on what we do here, by parking our paycheck onto that line of credit, we are immediately dropping our balance, immediately. So that means the average daily balance goes down immediately. So we're never spending 11% on this loan or this amount, I should say, for very long, because we're continuously dropping that. And so the interest then is less and less and less each month that goes by. So we start with the $54,240, and we know that we can put our entire income, the $5,600, can be put on this line of credit, because with a line of credit, you can pay all of your expenses through that line, okay? You don't have to hold out chargeables and non-chargeables, because everything at that point becomes quote unquote chargeable, because a line of credit is connected to your checking account. So just like this example, your line of credit is connected to your bank account. So the money comes into your bank account, and then it pays this personal line immediately. Then that line of credit is connected to the bank account either as overdraft protection, so that every debit that hits that checking account gets paid through that line of credit. And you only do that if it's hooked up for overdraft protection where there is no fee. If there is a fee, then you guys manually move the money, okay? So it's the same difference. You're just taking chunks out of the line of credit to cover the costs, the bills that you have that month. So all of your expenses, you're moving the money over and you're covering it, okay? So that's how that works, all right? So it comes into your bank account. You would then pay, the personal line would then actually, in a sense, move back to that line of credit, right? Or that checking account, because you make your payment and then you're charging those expenses back out, okay? So you park it in there, it takes care of it for you, right? You put your $5,600 back on this line of credit that's sitting there at $54,240. The $5,600 comes in, and then it drops your balance immediately to $48,640, okay? So we go from 54 to 48, just like that, okay? So, but then you have your expenses, right? So your expenses are charged up through the month, all right? So that's all of your expenses come back out. Now remember, it's 4507 and not the 5510 because we've taken care of these, right? They were absorbed by our line of credit. So we've then gained our cash flow back, all right? So our expenses then drop to 4507. But we also have interest that has to be added in. Okay, and the interest, again, at 11.5%, we have to then calculate that. So how do we get the first month's interest? Well, we take our high balance here, which is 54,240. We take our low balance, 48,640. We add them together. Then we're going to divide them by 2, and that gives us our average, okay? So once you get your average, you then multiply by your 0.115, okay? So we just turn that into a decimal, 0.115, okay? And that's going to give us 12 months worth of interest. We don't want 12 months though, because we know it's going to drop every single month. So we want the first month off of these two balances. So then what we're going to do is we know that we're going to divide it by 12 then, right? Because it's 12 months. We're dividing it by 12 to get our 1 month. And the first month, it's 492. So we have our expenses come back in, and we have our interest come back in. So that's going to bring the balance back up to 53,639. But it's not more than what we started with now, is it? And then we're going to run month 2. So month 2 comes, we park our paycheck, the $5,600 goes right back into that line of credit, drops our balance to 48,039, so $48,039, and we take the $48,039 and we know we have to add our expenses back in and we have to add our interest back in. Now, the interest again is configured same way. We take our high balance, right? We take our high balance, we take our low balance, we add them together, we divide by 2, and that gives us our average. We then multiply that by 0.115, gives us 12 months. We divide that then by 12, and that is where we get the $487. So we can see how we're dropping. Our interest is dropping every single month that we do this, all right? So this couple, when they only had a cash flow of $90, okay, it took them 61 months, or it's going to take them, I should say, because they haven't finished this process yet. It's going to take them 61 months to take care of these debts, okay, to take care of these 3 debts here. And the interest that they're going to pay in this 61 months or 5 years is going to be $17,213, as opposed to $33,548 over way more than 5 years, right? Because we've got a 6, an 8, and a 10, all right? So they've dropped the lowest, okay, term amount by a year. They've only spent $17,213 in interest compared to the $33,548 that they were going to spend had they let this term out, all right? So that means they saved $16,335, and that is pretty darn significant. Now, the other thing we did is we took a look at, I tell you guys all the time, I don't want you to have to change your lifestyle. I don't want you to have to do anything different. But for those of you that want to, and those of you that want to see if you shaved things down, what that would look like, and if it would be too painful, right? You might want to take a look at that. Well, they did take a look at their finances, and they were able to pare down by another $200. So what does that look like for them? If they're able to pare that down by another $200, and trust me, you guys, when we looked at this, they were like, we're not even going to feel this. This was stuff they didn't need, didn't even really know that they had, okay? So all these piddly expenses that, people do and people buy, you can save so much money by paring down the little itty bitty things that you don't even need, okay? So please always take a look at that. Always organize your finances and see where you can cut things, because you might find cash flow in the process, and these guys did, okay? So when they took a look at that and they pared down, all right, so this is what happens, all right? They end up shaving off another full year. They shave off another year, and their interest drops then to $13,589 that they spent for these loans and these lines, all right? And that means they save total, okay, instead of the $16,335, they're gonna save $19,959. That's pretty darn good when you think about it, right? So why do we do velocity banking? This is why we do velocity banking, because you save yourself and you free yourself, right? When you live in this kind of payment-strapped, payment-poor situation, you have no wiggle room. You don't have breathing room for anything. And even though $400 in cash flow here seemed like a pretty decent cash flow, and I would say it is. But when you look at the things that happen in our lives, right? Because stuff happens, you then have a place to go. With velocity banking, you have a place to go. When you don't have lines of credit to work with and you have nothing but loans, you then put your money in to pay that loan. You can't pull it back out. You can pull it back out with this home equity loan, okay? With this home equity line. You can. Even if this were a credit card, they could take that money out if they needed to. They have a way to make a payment on that, or to take out money from a credit card even, with, you know, things like plastique, you know. So you have options. What I'm telling you guys is you have options with line of credit that you don't have when you have payments and when you have loans like this. Thank you guys for watching. I hope you've learned something today. I hope you stick with us and continue to learn the velocity banking way. And I hope you learn the pay down way. Have an awesome evening. Talk to you later.